weeks before the event, I managed to injure my knee so badly I thought the ride was over before I'd even started. I also had a brand new bike I hadn't done any outdoor riding on. And then the weather changed completely. The heat was absolutely brutal. And just 45 kilometers into the ride, both my quads decided to fail. Despite all of that, I managed to finish almost 2 hours faster than I did last year. This is how. So just 2 weeks before the event, I took my new bike out and something must have been off with the bike fit because my right knee just absolutely flared up. I couldn't put any pressure on it. There was also a massive heat wave in the UK, which was really great. Got some free heat adaptation training until like the week before the event, and it was like winter again. It was absolutely freezing. So about 72 hours leading up to the event, I had no idea whether I'd be able to do it or not. My knee was getting better, but I wasn't sure if it would hold up for 200 plus kilometers. So on the day, we're in the last group for the Gran Fondo. That's what they'd assigned us to. So my plan for the start was just to see how well my knee would hold up. And surprisingly, it was really good. There was no noise coming from it. So the plan was to let my brother draft me until the first climb, and then we'd sort of part ways. And we must have been pushing some serious power because I'm convinced we overtook not only the first group who set off before us, but the one before them. We were just overtaking riders constantly at the start. And so I was feeling good. I was feeling confident, like the knee was holding up. And so we got to the first climb of the day, and for me, this was a highlight. This, by far, was the best climb. I'm noticing a bit of a theme here that the first climb always seems to be the best. I was getting a few Mallorca 312 flashbacks, which is like how busy it was, but because it was open road, you could overtake on the right-hand side, which worked out in my favor. And I feel like the catchphrase of the day for this ride was "on your right." I probably said that like 100 times that day. So getting to the top was pretty uneventful. I'm holding some decent zone 3 power, I'm flying up there, and all's going really well. And then we hit the descent. The new bike has hookless wheels, so I can confirm I have indeed survived descending and doing the event on hookless wheels with no issues. They seem to get a lot of bad press. So the first climb was brilliant, and the first descent was absolutely amazing. And as we start approaching a bit further into the event, we get to around kilometer 45, and this is where things start not going so well. I start having an issue with my quads. I just thought maybe I pushed it a little bit too hard, but then it was only my quads having that issue. My legs were feeling pretty good. And so I figured in my mind, I'll just push through. Let's just try and get to the first feed stop, and we can take a little pause there and just see if that helps. And so getting to the first feed stop, pretty uneventful, quick turnaround, got some water and back out on the road again. And my quads felt okay for about 10 minutes. And then the issue happened again. It was really weird what was going on. It was like the bottom half of the outside of my quads were just in really intense pain. Almost like if you've had DOMS and like trying to work out through that, but just a weird isolated spot on both legs. It was bizarre, like I've never seen anything like this. And my power at this point starts dropping, like I'm actually struggling at this point here. I've been flying up through the start, so I try spinning my legs, see if I can clear out some lactate. Nothing's working. I then try grinding a bit. Maybe it's neuromuscular fatigue. Nothing. This is getting really bad and starting to worry me because we've got a 220 kilometer event to do, and I'm hurting before we've even hit the 100k mark. So we got to the timed hill climb segment of the event, and my plan originally was to go full gas, like I was going to go for it. But whatever was going on with my quads completely changed the plan. And to make matters even worse, the heat had really picked up at this point. And so the tarmac is just reflecting all that heat right back at you. And because it had been raining about 48 hours prior, it was so humid as well, and it was like no wind at all. You were just cooking. And so I learned my lesson from the Fred Whitten. I made sure to wear some light layers at that day, and it paid off so much. And so on this time segment, I kind of had to resort to sitting in the saddle and turning it into a talk session, because when I tried to get out the saddle, my knee issue then started to flare up again. Everything's running through my head at this point of how the hell am I actually going to be able to complete this event? I now can't stand when I need to climb. My quads are hurting just constantly at this point, but there is some relief because I know very shortly the second feed stop's coming up. And part of my original plan was to try and skip it, but what I hadn't factored in that day was the extreme heat. And so I got to the second feed stop and it was just rammed, like massively busy. There was nowhere to really put your bike to even join the queue to then go and get water. And while I was trying to figure out what to do, the queue was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I made a tactical gamble at that point. I decided, you know what? I'm probably gonna have to spend maybe 20-30 minutes in this queue. That's after I find somewhere to put my bike, and it's just getting bigger by the minute. So my plan was to try and see if I could find a cafe or like a corner shop nearby and just top up water from there. And so I thought this might have worked because on my head unit it said High Street in like 6.5k. And so I thought, okay, that's maybe 10-15 minutes of riding and we'll finally get to a shop. Yeah, that wasn't the case. And so my gamble was now starting to backfire a bit. But what I had planned for is I brought some hydrogels from Decathlon, and apparently these are more watery than your normal gels. And so that kind of helped to bridge the gap. So along the way, I found this cafe and it was nice and cold on the inside, and they had a nice fully stocked fridge with cold drinks. And I think just taking a few moments here to pause on the ride and get the cold fluids in probably did me more favors than the time penalty I was starting to incur. It really was like an oasis in the desert. And so this was going to help me bridge to the third feed stop. Along the way, I got some GI issues and I'm getting flashbacks to Mallorca. But this time, I'd actually brought some ginger with me. I had no idea about like how to dose it or how it might work. So I took 2 cubes, I guess you'd call it, of crystallized ginger. And honestly, within about 10 seconds, the nausea went away. And what I then tried to do was at every feed stop to keep taking the ginger, just in case that's why I was getting the feeling in my quads, like maybe it was cramping or something. The annoying part was every time I stopped, the feeling of pain would go away for maybe about 10 or 15 minutes and it would just come back and it wouldn't stop. It didn't matter if I was going uphill, on the flat or on a descent, it was just constant. And I remember just suffering up this quite shallow climb up to the third feed stop. And I remember getting there and just eating my body weight in the potatoes they had there. Like that for me was another highlight of the event. Those little potatoes they had, yeah, you got to keep them away from me. I could probably devour the entire box. So after this feed stop, there was a climb that wasn't mentioned anywhere. My Garmin hadn't picked it up, it didn't come up on Strava, and there was nothing on the top tube sticker. You turned left onto this farm, and honestly, this was something like straight out from the Fred Whitten. It was like a 20% gradient going up in the heat, but there was no warning and there was like no signs or anything. So with my bad knee, I'm trying to figure out like, do I walk it? Do I climb it? How long is it going to go on for? Luckily, it was quite a short segment. And so it didn't take long just to get over it. And then you started on a little descent. But that was just like a complete curveball I hadn't anticipated. And we kind of got to what I would consider the boring part of the event. Like it was just a country lane with a few hills and it was just hedges next to you. So mentally there wasn't a lot going on. And for me, I always find that the hardest part in endurance rides when there's just like nothing to sort of visually take your mind off things. The only thing I've got is pain. So that's the only thing keeping me entertained or distracted, I guess, from the boredom. But there were some good groups in there and some fast riders. So I tagged along with them as best I could. And towards the end, there was a chap who I had to compliment. He was like descending it like an absolute beast. Turns out this was a local training route for him, so he knew all the roads really well, and he was a really good wheel to follow coming out of there. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, hey, we've got Black Mountain coming up at some point, and you can't miss it. It's a literal mountain. And so we have a kind of drawn out, quite shallow climb. And at this point, even on that, it's sort of like 3 or 4%, I honestly considered getting off and walking. Like the pain was getting that bad at that point, I really wasn't sure how I was going to keep going on. And just as I think I might be about to get some relief, I then see the sign, Black Mountain. So my legs are toast at this point. Like my quads are screaming. And now I've got to do a 6-kilometer climb. And so very gingerly, I put it into my easiest gear and just try and muster up whatever I can, just keep the wheels turning. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but literally 200 meters into that, I just wanted to walk it. I mean that seriously, like I was in a ton of pain. I'm not sure what happened next because the first 4 kilometers are a bit of a blur. Maybe it was the heat and maybe I was talking to random people, I just remember having a conversation about the free beer you were going to get at the end. And so when I finally got to about 2 kilometers from the top, the penny kind of dropped for me, and I was like, hey, look, my knee hasn't flared up in a little while. Why don't we try standing? And I'm really glad I did this because I'm not sure my quads could have taken any more in that seated position. So getting out and standing, my knee was holding up at this point. And that was a bit of a shock because throughout the day, it'd been flaring up every time I got out the saddle. And so it was a really nice feeling of just being able to do those last 2 kilometers, give it a bit of gas and just get over it, because I knew at that point there was only going to be one climb left and there was going to be the final feed stop where I could stop for at least 10 or 15 minutes and just hope that I can get this feeling out my legs enough to try and cross the finish line. So descending Black Mountain, again, really cool highlight, really fast. And it was kind of nice to get a break after all that climbing and all that heat, because it was like a furnace going up there. It was just unbelievably hot. As I'm making my way towards the final feed stop, I kind of had a flashback again to Mallorca, where I looked at my head unit and it said the feed stop was at 179 kilometers and I'd done 180. But I learned my lesson from the 312 where you get GPS drift. And it was literally then round the corner and you could see the signs like feed stop in 500 meters. The vibes at that feed stop in particular were amazing, and I loved the fact they had the kids running around again, topping up the water bottles. So it was a really fast pit stop, except I was going to take my time a little bit here because I was really questioning how I was going to get to the end. So I do take a little bit of an indulgence at this feed stop. I can't remember how long I actually stopped for. Oh yeah, and I ate probably again my body weight in the potatoes there. I cannot hype them up enough. They are absolutely amazing. I decided to also grab a couple of gels while I was there. I just thought a bit of extra fuel just in case I need it to get me across the finish line. And so there's like a nice little gentle hill as you come out that feed stop. I hadn't even started at that point and the pain in my legs is already back. And so I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I've got 45k to the finish line. Let's just do whatever it takes to survive at this point. If we have to grind it, if we have to spin, I don't care, just whatever it takes to finally get there. And it was a really horrible few climbs on the way there, some really steep stuff. And I think the final marked one of the day is about 2 or 3 kilometers long, but it had a load of cars and people and vehicles stopping. It was getting a little bit stressful on that one. I remember seeing one poor chap who turned up in winter kit, and he must have been feeling the same way I was at the Fred Whitten. Like, he must have been baking in there like a potato. And so at this point, I managed to get over this climb, whatever it was. On the way home, I finally clocked something and what might have actually been causing the issue with my quads all along. A while back, I did a video review on Neil Stanbury's bike fitting course, and he mentioned for hypermobile riders, we tend to need a further reach and a lower stack height. And so when I moved over to the new bike, I kind of played it a bit safe, and I left 30 mils of spacers in there, but 20 would have been an exact like-for-like fit. And so on the final section home, probably the last sort of 20k, I decided to get in, I think what you call it, the ski pole position. As soon as I did that, my hamstrings and glutes turned on. If I sat more upright, the quads flared. So it was literally one group of muscles working or the other group working, but they weren't working together. I probably had been spending the whole day just absolutely overusing my quads. And then when I stood out to climb, I'm using the glutes and hamstrings. So I managed to hold that ski pole position pretty much all the way to the finish line. And I'm so glad I did, because I wanted to end on a really positive note. It had been a hell of a day. I've had knee pain, I've had quad issues all day. We had a run-in with some GI distress. But apart from all that, everything had been going really well. Like, this was a highlight for me. So when I crossed that finish line, I was just blown away. I got the text for the time I finished the ride in, and I want you to think about this for just a second here before I reveal what that time is. Because the year prior, I did it in 11 hours and 48 minutes. This year, I'd pretty much got it bang on 10 hours on the money. I probably could have been faster. What I hadn't anticipated was all the issues I was going to be facing throughout the day. And for all the cycling data nerds out there, I think the part that's blown me away the most, looking at all the historical data, is last year I did it with a normalized power of 181 watts. This year, my normalized power was 229 watts. It would have been higher had I not had the quad issues that was affecting my power output throughout the day. which when you flip that round, that is massive. Everything I've been doing had led to that moment and it all come together, and this for me was a major win. I can finally now put this chapter to bed. There are probably ways I could have done this faster, and while it may have been good to have had some outside support, I quite like the challenge in itself of using what's only provided to you on the event. And I think again in hindsight, I'd probably do some better route research just to know where there may be some shops or cafes along the route, just if I decide to skip any feed stops. But I am so proud of the effort I put in that day, despite everything that got thrown at me. So probably the big question right now is, am I going to go back and will I try and do it in a faster time? And for me, like I said, I'm probably not. I'm probably not going to do the Gran Fondo again, but there's still the bigger route. And so it's been toying on my mind. This year in particular, I've been wanting to do a 300-kilometer ride. Unfortunately, you couldn't upgrade to do the further distance this year, and seeing how my knee was before the start, I didn't really want to tempt fate. And so maybe next year we might attempt a longer ride. Something else that was unique about this particular event compared to last year's as well is this had nearly 400 extra meters of climbing in it. So what they've done this year is it actually reversed the route. So not only had I shaved off nearly 2 hours of riding, I then added an extra 400 meters of elevation on top of that. For me, this was a phenomenal effort, and I'm really proud of how I did it. And so if you did the event this year, what challenges did you face? And what advice would you give to riders who are thinking about doing it? One piece of advice from me is I'd probably bring a Tupperware pot, because I'm absolutely bringing some of those potatoes back next time. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one.